Mhm. I was just checking out some classic TV, and it actually gave me some great ideas for some show topics for the call-in shows of the future, but not tonight because I lugged up a bunch of boxes for a reason. For a reason, I lugged up a bunch of boxes from the garage to show you my dwindling collection of college football magazines from years gone by. Here at the Voice of College Football, welcome in. Hope everyone's having a great Friday. Great. Are we on Friday? I can't even remember and keep track of the days. That used to be an easy thing to do when I had the standard job. But now that I operate, especially during the off season when it doesn't even matter when Saturday is. Yes, it would be Friday, the end of the work week. I guess the stock market keeps me in line in regards to the days as well. So hopefully we've got a ton of people coming into the live chat. I will take, of course, your comments and questions as I always do. And of course, the number I will post in just a second at 860-499-3332. Nothing is off the table in regards to the game that we love. So at one point, I started collecting college football magazines, sports magazines, not just college football magazines, big NFL fan, Major League Baseball fan my whole life. Started collecting in 1978. I got my first Sports Illustrated in July of 1979. And on the cover was the Snake, Kenny Stabler, in his summer camp red jersey, still with the Oakland Raiders at that point. The Snake slinging it and actually looking for a comeback season at that point that never came. At least in Oakland. And that was my very first Sports Illustrated. I will never forget it. I haven't for over 40 years. So that was the beginning of Sports Illustrated's coming to the Rogers household from 1979 to about 2004, 2005, something in that range is when I stopped getting the Sports Illustrateds because I really, once I got to be in my early 20s, kind of graduated from Sports Illustrated because if you're really hardcore, and we're really hardcore back in the day, then it had to be the sporting news, especially if as a baseball fan, it had to be the sporting news. So I converted to the sporting news, and then the Sports Illustrated just became kind of like I drifted off of Sports Illustrated at some point. Again, I think it was 2004, 2005, something in that range. But sporting news. All right, we got a call coming in. I don't know who this is, but I recognize the area code from back home on this one. Grab that Amazon link. Of course, use Amazon using our link. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
The man that gives college football its voice, Mark Rogers. How are you, sir?
David, I am doing just fine. How's it going for you tonight?
I'm excellent. I kind of find your topic to be very intriguing. I heard what you mentioned a little bit at the top. I do have to say, as a person that has subscription to Sports Illustrated for a long period of time, I found it to be a pretty good magazine, but I always did tend to agree with you. I thought that sporting news was pretty informative, but then I kind of moved up in my publication of college football. I still feel, and I think you would agree, that the Phil Steele college football preview is the gold standard. Is that pretty much the common agreement in the college football universe?
It would always take me forever standing at the newsstand between Lindy's, Athlon's, Street and Smith, Phil Steele. I would always have to I would sit there for I don't know how long, 45 minutes, and compare, okay, which one has the rosters, which one has the depth charts, which one has last year's stats, before, of course, we could go online and see all that. And I would have to make all these comparisons before I would figure, oh man, they have this, and that, but they also have this, and I like how they do this. But I would come to some kind of determination. I really can't make a call between those four fine publications. I certainly have purchased many of each one of those over the years.
See, I think that Phil Steele's was the best. Well, it's the most in depth. Let's put it that way, because it breaks down position groups. It really gets into really good detail if you are kind of like we are, the hardcore college football fan. I will say this though, Athlon or Lindy's strikes me. It's so overloaded with like pictures and everything. Did you ever notice that? It's all about photographs, and they got to have a zillion different like pictures of the stadium and all those things. Was it more Lindy's or Athlon? I looked at them both, but I'm trying to remember which one was more like that.
David, I've got to say that your recollection of all this is much better than mine, because my recollection is I really had difficult at times separating all of them when I would make a decision. Now, this is back, when I'm an 18-year-old and I'm only going to buy one magazine because I'm not going to have the money or splurge in any way to get 4 college football magazines. So I'm only going to make the one purchase. And I don't remember, certainly that would have negated one of them had they had too many pictures, because I didn't need pictures. Even back then when there was nothing online, I still didn't need pictures to know who, Tom Tuba was.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, believe you me, there's nothing better than that, late July, early August, go to the grocery store and wait to pick up your college football preview. And that's usually when some would hit like in, middle of July. So, I always found that time of the year to be really interesting. I'm sure, as you know, more than anybody. But I will say this, I still have, I think somewhere, in 1998, the number one, Ohio State opened up number one on Sports Illustrated, and Andy Katzenmoyer was on the cover.
I remember that one.
Well, that was a good one, real good one. So
yeah, he was kind of peering down at the camera.
Well, yeah, I remember there was a debate at the time whether he was going to be eligible with his kind of class load, if you want to call it that, at the time.
So that must have been the edition where it said Ohio State number one and it had an asterisk next to the number one.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Debating on whether he was going to make the grade, because he was clearly the best linebacker in the country at the time. So, yeah, that was when I had an SI subscription for a fair period of time. But like I said, once I discovered Phil Steele, I thought, and he's of course an Ohio guy, and he just does a great job of breaking down college football. You've had him on the show a few times, haven't you, Mark?
I have. He's a very gracious man and a hard worker. And now that you're clarifying the various publications, I was just kind of lumping them together because I was thinking back to when, again, I was making these purchases. I believe that I had discovered the other ones before Phil Steele, but there is no question that you're right. If you're just talking about sheer information to the point where he has a code, he has a key that has shortened every conceivable word or anything down to where he compacts the information so tightly, you have to be up on the key because he is not about the narrative and trying to weave some kind of tale. That was always an issue that I had with some of these other publications, is you really had to get to the second or third paragraph before you learned anything. But exactly, with Phil Steele, it is packed with information. Yes, definitely more so than the other ones.
Right. Yeah, I thought Sporting News wasn't bad, but he took it to like another level. That's so I said I kind of went from the SI to the Sporting News, and then eventually to him as far as the kind of as far as college previews are concerned. You still keep your old ones there, don't you, Mark?
Well,
you still probably have them all laying around there, don't you?
It's a bit strange that I actually decided to do this tonight. Something happened over the past couple of days, or just today, that made me think, okay, I've meant to do that at some point and talk about and just rummage through my old magazines and have people share their own stories. But something came across my path today that caused me to do that. What is odd about me doing this now is that, okay, so for example, I have in my hand a Sports Illustrated from October 1st, 1984, with Jeff Smith and #1 Nebraska on the cover. And I see a UCLA defender in his wake. And if I remember correctly, UCLA was a top 2 or 3 team in the country early in the season a couple times, and Nebraska took them to school. And
right.
What's ironic about me choosing to talk about this now is that I've kept these magazines for decades. All of them. Didn't throw away anything. Kept them pristine, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And about, I don't know how many months ago, 3 or 4 months ago, I was just looking around at box after box after box, and I weaved through a few of these boxes and kept maybe 10% of the magazines, if that, and started hauling out boxes to the trash, and I dumped a ton of them.
Right. Yeah, I'm a big sports collectibles person. I mean, I have some old, like some Sports Illustrated and preview magazines, and why is it escaping me? The magazine that you get when you go to a sporting event.
Oh my word, the program. The program?
The program. Yeah, right. Yeah, I think it's the program. Right.
I've got a ton of those.
Left.
Yep.
Yeah, and those, those still have, to keep everything in good shape as far as those goes, they still have some value to them, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and the other thing that I used to have a ton of are media guides. I used to have a ton of those all over the place as well, but no longer. I've dumped just about all of those.
Back from your reporting days, huh, Mark?
Absolutely.
Hey, Mark, I got a football question for you. I want to throw this out here. I didn't get a chance to get it to you the other night. I watch a fair amount of pros as I do college. And, with the NFL draft coming up, obviously there's been a lot of talk about the quarterback coming out in this draft. And I just wonder, what are your thoughts on Mac Jones as a pro prospect? Especially, kind of considering, that a lot of the Alabama quarterbacks, up until maybe Tua, and I think you still have to wait and see with Tua in Miami. I think he did some pretty good things last year for them. And, they won some games with him, no doubt about it. But, I mean, as a future NFL quarterback, a lot of Alabama quarterbacks, I mean, we can run down the list from, McElroy to McCarron to Sims to Jacob Coker, aren't NFL quarterbacks. Just what do you think about his prospects? I mean, because so many times a lot of the Alabama quarterbacks are, in really good offenses with great offensive lines, great skill players, just like Mac Jones. And, sometimes they end up situations and don't really succeed in the NFL. I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that, and maybe what some of your Alabama people think.
I think we tabled this topic a few weeks ago or sometime after the season. And my conclusion on Mac Jones is basically the guy that came to mind when we discussed it or somebody else called about it as being the guy that fooled us in college because of such dominant talent around him was Matt Leinart. And that one I could kind of foresee. Yeah. I could foresee that one. Now, when it came to Mac Jones, and I've certainly been wrong when I say that I got it right on Matt Leinart, believe me, I've gotten it wrong on a ton of people. With Mac Jones, I could see that going either way because I think he's pretty prototypical. And it would have been nice to see him under a little bit more duress and throwing to tighter windows because of a less of a skill advantage on his side of the football. And even the Ohio State game, he really wasn't under that much pressure for most of the game.
Right.
So he delivers the ball. There's no question about that. And he's got a strong enough arm. He doesn't have a top end great arm, but it's in an upper echelon type arm. And And the more successful quarterbacks that have come out of school recently have been more mobile than he is. He's not a detriment to the offense, but it's not a plus.
Sure.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing. I mean, I think he is fairly accurate. I do think he has got a pretty good arm. I will say, it is more and more important to be able to use your legs in football nowadays and be able to make plays outside of the structure of the offense and not just be the prototypical drop back guy. I mean, and not to say that couldn't work in the NFL, but so many plays are made outside of the structure of the offense nowadays. It is important to have that ability. The one thing, the interesting thing, you made the Liner comparison, and that's not a bad one. And I thought the one thing that would help Liner is where, he kind of fell in the draft because a lot of people thought he was, maybe a better prospect the year before. He might have been better to have come out the year before and might have gone higher in the draft. And then the next year, he kind of fell in the draft and ended up going to Arizona, which I thought was a good situation at the time because remember they had those really good wide receivers. And it wasn't but a year or two later, Kurt Warner took that team to a Super Bowl within one play of winning it. So sometimes when you slip in the draft, what happens when you slip? You usually end up going to a more talented football team. So I'm wondering if he did slip in the draft and went down and ended up with a better team, could end up being the best thing for him. But, a lot of projections have him going pretty high. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I don't know in terms of a fit. I don't follow the NFL game well enough to know where he would fit in with the rest of the offense or the play calling and the approach to the offense. But I think Mac Jones has a real shot to be a good quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I think it's, like a lot of them, it's going to depend on situation. But I don't think I think he's got some really good qualities. But again, it's awfully tough to judge because, especially considering when you're put into a Mercedes, you're always going to have a really good chance to succeed in college, no doubt about it. So,
David, can you see the screen?
I'm sorry.
Can you see the screen?
I'm sorry, I cannot.
Can you see the screen? The show?
No, I was stepped away within another room.
Oh, okay.
Now. I'm sorry.
I'm just holding up the Andy Katzenmoyer magazine.
Oh, you found it. Okay.
I got it.
Oh, that's cool.
All right,
so
David.
You're one of those that had us. All right, Mark. Well, it's a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Take care.
I would like to know what the NFL scouts are saying about Mac Jones. I've certainly got my thoughts as I just raised, but I'm not super hot or cold on Mac Jones. Baseball fans, you would have a field day in here as well. Ohio State fans, another cover there. Somebody counted up the covers and which teams and players were covered the most over a certain period of time. So this is the Sports Illustrated preview for the which season? It must be 2003, probably coming back from the 2002 Ohio State National Championship, and they had Ohio State repeating. And then Oklahoma 2, Miami 3, Texas 4, Georgia, Virginia Tech, Kansas State, NC State at number 8, and Phillip Rivers at quarterback. Number 9, Auburn, USC at 10. And then, of course, this is, again, 2003. So Oklahoma did play in the national championship game, the BCS championship game, and LSU. Nowhere to be found in the top 10, at least. All right, let's get to the comments. We've got 104 of them stacked up. It's going to take me a minute to get through these babies. So Phil B likes Lindy's less statistics and more analysis. Well, in this day and age especially, years ago, I would want the stats because where else are you going to find the stats? If you want college football stats, where are you going to get them? If it's 1990, where are you getting college football stats? Nowhere. You pretty much, and so I would go heavy on the stats then, but now you just go online, you can go to a million different sites and get statistics. So yeah, the analysis is certainly more crucial here. Robbie Alomar. Oh, man, look at Craig Krenzel went on a run. Well, this was, of course, the national championship winner against that would be the University of Miami in the 2003 Fiesta Bowl. I don't know that anyone is familiar with this game out there, but Ohio State won it 31-24 in double overtime. So there's another Krenzel. Oh, man, look at this. We're on a bit of a Buckeye roll here. And no, I just didn't keep Ohio State magazines. I had about the first 3 or 4 were Nebraska. So we got the Sporting News preview. So this must have been 2003. It had to be because Maurice Clarett played 1 year. And so this is 2003. Oh. This is the 2002. This is Christmas time 2002. So this is going into, I saw the word preview, but it was bowl preview 2002. So Sporting News, wow. Look at them. As a 14-point dog, they picked Ohio State to beat Miami. I thought Kirk Herbstreit and myself were the only ones around for that, which won me a pretty large pool at work. I was only about a year into my job at ESPN, and I was like in 11th place going into the national championship game, but all 10 people in front of me picked Miami to win. Oh, there's my guy. This might be my favorite cover of all time. That is after the Ohio State-Michigan game in 79. We got that. We got a lot of baseball you guys don't want to see. David was talking about programs. There's a program there from a Cleveland Indians game. Oh, man, there's some good stuff. Little sideline to the college football talk would be, is anyone old enough to remember this? It would have been about 1978, I believe, when, oh man, I didn't think I kept these. McDonald's, this was a giveaway, gave away Super Bowl, what would you call these? Super Bowl volumes, volume 1, 2, and 3. And they recapped each Super Bowl. There were only 12 at the time. But oh my goodness, I devoured these, meaning they have the rosters in there. Oh my goodness. If I look through these, I would remember every bit of information. Whoa. We got, so the call-in number, let me get this straight, 860-499-3332. So before I take off the Amazon ticker at the bottom of the screen, shop Amazon, use the link in the description section of the video. So somebody's calling the old number. Let me get you the new number. There it is. 860-499-3332. But my goodness, they had the roster for every Super Bowl and the scores of the season, and I devoured these, meaning I memorized everything. I used to know the attendance at every Super Bowl. I was nuts. Yes. Oh, this is bringing back memories. Goodness gracious. Yes. Good stuff. Anyway, not college football related. This will be for my NFL channel once we get there. And I even remember I filled in the guy there. See, that was Dwayne Thomas. And I didn't like that they just had a shadow of Dwayne Thomas there. So I drew in the uniform. As a 12-year-old, as a 10-year-old, I didn't like that. All right. I think we got DeAndre on the line here at the Voice of College Football. DeAndre, what's going on tonight?
What's going on, Mark? How you doing, man?
I gotta good.
Switch your numbers. I got to switch your numbers. It seems like you got to call this number before you call the other number.
Yes, this is the number, and we will stay with this number going forward. I just got to remember to get it on the screen so everybody can see it.
Hold on, Mark. Okay. Well, okay. I got a couple questions.
Yep.
So, 2007, I think Clemson was 9-4. I lost to Auburn in the Peach Bowl.
Yep.
So my question is, how much should we give Tommy Boughton credit for changing Clemson's program? And when I say that is, I know Dabo's had a lot of success, but what did Tommy Bowden bring to the table? He, at least to me, in my opinion, as a Clemson fan, at least set the foundation from what we saw with Ken Hatfield and Kenny West.
Yeah, so Dabo's first season was 09, correct?
Right? Yeah, he was 6-5.
Yeah,
I believe.
7-6, right? Didn't he?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, one of those.
I think he actually went 6-7 one year. That must have been his first year. I thought they went under 500. But anyway, regardless, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So Bowden's last class.
Yeah, you're right. He was 6-7 first year.
Yeah, 6-7. Lost a bowl game. So Bowden, his recruiting classes with Dabo. So 09, he would have had a hand in the 09 class, of course. And so you could move that up until what? The 2012 team that beat LSU in the Peach Bowl, that would have had 12, 11, 10, 9. It's a bit of a stretch to see whether he had players there, but he certainly, most of his players were playing in for the team that finally broke the long stretch of not winning the conference, that finally won the conference and then played West Virginia in the Orange Bowl. But it's a great point.
Right. Well, that first year that Dabo was there, the first interim year is when Alabama beat Clemson. And the first game of the year when Clemson had high expectations, they were like that was highest ranking since since like 1989 maybe. I think they might have started out. We get to lose to Florida State 87 down at Florida, down in Clemson. So yeah, I think that was the biggest ranking to start the season off since then. So they had a lot of expectations because they had Davis and Spiller. But I was just wondering that question because, I understand that Boughton wasn't great, but he still put some of the stuff in place. But Dabo wouldn't have a job without Boughton. I mean, I think Dabo, what he did was very smart by coaches that the coach the defense that were really good, like Venables and Chad Morris. So yeah, I think that he did a good job in getting Sammy Watkins and keeping CJ Spiller around. So yeah, I think he did a good job. So I think that was a game changer. Getting Todd Ward, thank you, Tennessee. So yeah, I think he did a good job of doing that. But I think Tommy Boughton deserves some credit because I don't think he ever had a losing season. He just couldn't get him over the hump.
So since his teams and the players that he recruited and signed really didn't have a hand in winning big games, and we just mentioned, I really felt as though that 2012 team took a step forward for the program. I know that they won the ACC in 2011, but so why do you think that he really set the stage? Just by getting Dabo on the staff?
Modernizing the offense. Getting people like Woody Danzler. I mean, I know that was who was the coach at Rich Rod did a lot of stuff with the offense, and then he left and went to West Virginia. But just modernizing the offense, getting them more to a passing offense. I mean, they still have some good recruiting classes and some good players come through there. They just never planned out like they have under Dabo. So I mean, I don't know how you look at it, but I mean, I just think that he just reserves a lot of respect because I look at Clemson in Colorado. After McCarthy left, Colorado kind of took a nosedive, right? And we really never heard from them again.
Mm-hmm.
Clemson was just hanging around, fluttering around, 9-5, 6 wins to 9 wins. Dabo just took them to another level when he got there. When he took over as head coach. But I know Dabo recruited most of the players. I think what they said, 80% of the players that were on that team when he took over. So that was one of the reasons why the coach gave him the job. The AD gave him the job. So I would just wonder, what did you think about it? But I get what you're saying too. Really, this is Dabo's base. I mean, for the last 9 years, Clemson's been humming under Dabo. So, for the last 9-10 years, they've been humming under Dabo. So this really is Dabo's success. But I was just wondering what could you credit Boughton with his 10 years. Another question: why couldn't Boston College maintain their success in that time period? Because I think they had Kingsley, they had Ryan, they had another linebacker that was pretty good. Why wasn't Boston College able to maintain their capability of being in the top 10 or at least top 25 schools?
Well, before I answer that, I also think that the Orange Bowl against West Virginia was a blessing in disguise because it slapped Dabo around and got him to hire Brent Venables, of course. So that was a turning point.
I remember that game, and I remember it pretty well. I think Pac-Man ran back like a 100-yard touchdown off of what's that called? A fumble on the 1-yard line for Clemson. I think they knocked it out of Duke Ellington's hand. And I'm not saying that would have changed the score, but it seems like Clemson. I mean, I know 70 points is a lot of points, but it seems
especially
like Clemson
then.
scoring. Yeah, but still was able to, get other jobs, other places. So I wonder, maybe that game, it was a bad loss. Don't get me wrong, it's 37 points, but it's kind of like, I think still takes too much of the blame for it. I think Clemson turned the ball over a lot that game. And don't get me wrong, I'm glad that he took Venables, but I'm just saying, I think still, if you look at his coaching, what he's done in coaching since he's left Clemson, he's still a pretty good defensive coordinator, am I correct? It seems like he always gets jobs everywhere he goes and have pretty good defenses. I think he was at Auburn last, right?
Auburn last, yes.
Yeah. I don't think that was his defense's fault. I think that was more Gus Malzahn's fault than it was his. But I think Auburn had some pretty good defenses when he was there in recent history. But I was asking about the Boston College. Why wasn't they able to maintain their success?
Well, it's certainly difficult to win at Boston College, I think, because where are they going to go for players? Where are they going to go for elite players? So they have pulled some guys out of Florida, of course, like everybody else has, but the Northeast is not a great place to pull volumes of players out. There are some. Actually, Connecticut has better football players than you would think, but it's still an extremely small state, and you can't get volume out of the Northeast. So I've always been impressed with Boston College winning as much as they do.
Right.
They're
Let me
too.
ask you this, Mark.
What's that?
Go ahead, Mark. I'm listening. Go ahead.
Well, and their two peaks were the Doug Flutie era and the year or two that you alluded to with Matt Ryan, where they were as high as number 2 in the country in 2007 or 8. I think it was 7. And other than that, they've done well to compete and barely get to bowl games. They've had a history of going 7-5 since the early 80s. Other than Flutie and other than Matt Ryan, that's pretty much what they've been.
So with Alphabet, they wasn't that good?
What's that?
Well, Alphabet, that was still 7-5 and 8-5 and stuff like that.
That's a good
Well,
question.
Alphabet.
I'm not coming up with their exact records during that time, but yeah, they would be in that range. Yeah.
Okay. So you said something about Northeast talent. Do you consider Northeast New Jersey?
It's on the fringe. Yeah, New Jersey would be the best talent of any state in the Northeast if you consider it the Northeast. That's debatable. New England people would not consider that to be. It's not New England, but yeah, it's the Northeast generally, or it's the Atlantic. You can group New Jersey in with New England to a certain extent, or you can come down and say New Jersey, Maryland, the Philadelphia area, Delaware, that North Atlantic region.
Yeah, Mid-Atlantic, right? But yeah, because I'm going to ask you, because I was watching the old Nebraska game. I can't remember who was playing, but the point was that, I saw that a lot of the Nebraska players was from New Jersey. And I noticed, like, if you look at Michigan, Wisconsin, like their running back, a lot of them come from New Jersey. So I was wondering, was that had something to do with it? Like, do they hit New Jersey hard? I don't know what Penn State get a lot of their players for, because Pennsylvania's so big into football. So, I know, like, population movement, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. So you go to Pitt or Penn State, but I was going to ask you, did that have something to do with it? And that doesn't explain why Rutgers has sucked most of our lives. But, I mean, that's what I was about to ask you next, because I wonder, was that where Boston College got a lot of their talent from when they were good, with the New Jersey area?
Yeah, that would make sense. I don't know that. I don't know that for sure, but that would certainly make a lot of sense.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Last thing, Mark, tell me, what was your definition of a blue blood? What was your definition of a blue blood when it comes to college football?
Okay. So I'm separating elite and blue blood. So Clemson's an elite, but I don't consider them a blue blood. I don't even like the term, but when people go to that term, I think of it, the term comes from royalty, meaning once you are royalty, you're always royalty, regardless of what happens after that. So, there's just a progression to the throne, and you don't have to do anything to earn the throne. You just are born. And therefore, once you were royalty, you're always royalty. So whomever was royalty at a certain point in time, and we could take that to an extreme and say Yale and Harvard are blue bloods, if we really want to take it to an extreme. Right. And if we wanted to take it to that extreme, then Ohio State would not be a blue blood. But I think people generally look at a certain time frame of college football as saying, okay, this is the beginning of somewhat modern college football, and therefore your blue bloods are Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Alabama, USC, Texas, Oklahoma for sure. And
that's what I was going to ask you about.
Debate Nebraska and Penn State.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. So let's look at Rutgers. Is Rutgers considered a blue blood because they played the first game of the college football history?
No.
Okay.
But again, I'm not going to be the guy that's going to argue blue bloods. So I'm not going to really be that passionate about that argument. If somebody wants to call me and say Rutgers is a blue blood because they played the very first college football game, I'd say, sure, fine.
Okay. So, so we would consider Michigan a blue blood, but not really. I'm talking about the current teams that are in the bigger teams, the bigger leagues, like Michigan, Texas, Southern Cal, Notre Dame, Nebraska, right? But you would consider Clemson, Oklahoma, Ohio State, schools like that, they're more elite, right?
Again, somebody correct me in the chat. But the term blue blood goes to royalty. So, for example, Clemson could be the best football program in the country for the next 50 years, and they will never be a blue blood just because they were never a blue blood. if you follow me. So
Yeah,
it's kind
I
of a
agree with you.
stupid term in a sense because it excludes. But I guess that's the meaning of the term. Just like royalty, again, you could have a certain particular person who has all the skill and all the ability to be ruling the land, but he's not in the right family, so he's not going to rule the land. Somebody else is, just because they are in the right bloodline. You still with us, DeAndre? Oh, I think we lost DeAndre. All right.
Mark, I'm here.
Oh, there
Mark.
you are.
Mark.
Yes, sir.
So like Florida State, Miami, Clemson, Oklahoma, Ohio State wouldn't be on the same level as USC, Michigan, and Notre Dame in that way, correct?
I don't know that
Is that how
Ohio
we
State.
look at it?
I don't know that USC started winning anytime earlier than Ohio State. I don't know for sure. My 1920s recollection's a bit vague.
Okay. Well, all the reason why I say USC over Ohio State because USC to me was the first West Coast power compared to Ohio State being in the Midwest, where Notre Dame. I don't know about Notre Dame and Ohio State, but I know Michigan probably would be over Ohio State in the Midwest. Like Alabama in the South was the first, to me, the first power in the South. And in the Southwest, you'll go with Texas. So that's why I was looking at it like that. So that's why I had a question about that. You know, because I heard somebody else say Rutgers would be considered a blue blood because they played in the first college football game. I said, oh, that's an interesting statement. And I said, how would you consider them a blue blood? I just didn't see it, so I just wanted your opinion on it because they said they played the first college football game. That's why I had to ask.
And I always forget who they played. I think it was Dartmouth. So would they be a blue blood? They'd be a blue blood too.
Yeah.
Unless, again,
Rutgers in the first game.
Rutgers has continued to play major college football, and Dartmouth has not. So I guess they would have given up that.
I think they played Princeton the first game.
Princeton.
I think it was Princeton.
Yeah, it probably is. I knew it was one of those in the Ivy League. So your Boston College question about Matt and Tim Hasselbeck during their time there, a couple 4-7s, a couple 7-5s, 8-4 at best.
Oh wow, I'm shocked. I thought it were better than that because they would have been the Big East towns, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked. I thought they would have been. I mean, it's like you said, it's hard to recruit that area. I mean, like I said, my friend is Marty Jorman. He was the AD up there, and he told me, he said you got hockey, volleyball, and both basketball teams sharing the gym. He said, what other school do you know that does that? So I can imagine they can't put a whole lot of money in.
Yeah, we used to have a Boston College guy on here, Dan Rubin, from SB Nation, and I remember just a couple of years ago he was talking up Boston College being able to get into a football facility, indoor football facility that was like a 60-yard field, and that was an improvement.
I was just wondering because you brought up 2007 and Virginia Tech and Boston College played for the ACC championship.
Yep.
So I was just wondering about that. And I guess Big Ten didn't play a conference championship at that time, did they?
No, not until 2011.
Oh, wow.
2011.
Yeah. This is going to be my last question. I'll let you go, let other people talk. Do you see any more expansion coming?
Somebody just asked me that the other day, and I certainly thought at the time that all those moves were made about 10 years ago. Nebraska, Missouri, Utah, Colorado, Texas A&M, and then a couple of years later, Rutgers and Maryland. I thought we were headed that way because there was just so much movement in the span of 2 or 3 years. I just have a huge issue with the expansion because we're going to go to 16 teams if that happens and go to these super conferences. And I just think it tears the conference concept apart. But will it happen? It's going to happen if there's a money reason for it to happen. So if somebody can explain to me who would make more money with us having larger conferences, and I'm not saying that because I don't believe it. I'm just saying I don't know why that would be. So somebody would have to explain to me again how more money could be made by the conferences and the school. Well, the conferences would make more money. That obviously they would just have more teams to draw in more money. But
that's
why
what
that
killed
would
the
make
Mountain
sense.
West, right? That's what killed the Mountain West. The conference got their conference. I think the Mountain West had 16 teams at one time. That's what killed them, right?
Well, it didn't kill them. They're still around. Or do you mean the WAC?
Well, was it a WAC? Which one had 16 at one time? But then
I thought it was.
got all broken up again.
I thought the WAC
It was the WAC.
got torn up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but I see it, but I don't know where they will reach for. I think the ACC is going to expand in next 5 years. I don't think Notre Dame is going to be part of it. I think Notre Dame is going to keep the same contract, but I see the ACC expanding, and I see the Big 12 getting smaller. I think West Virginia and Cincinnati is going to come over to the ACC eventually. I thought it was going to be UConn, but I think they had a pretty good football season this year, but I thought it was going to be basketball season, but I thought it was going to be UConn, but I don't think UConn cares about football too much.
Yeah, the West Virginia Cincinnati tie-in would make a whole lot of sense with Louisville.
Huh? Was that Rob?
All right, DeAndre, I think we've lost you back and forth here. We'll let you go for tonight. Appreciate the call. All right. The voice recognition is phenomenal in terms of trying to understand who's calling and what they're calling about. So the last auto screen voice recognition for the call I'm about to take would be Animal Jam caught up in Michigan State recruiting. Hey, Beverly, we're in front of the pound key. Which one is the pound key? Hey, we'll see what we've got here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
It's MSU number one fan.
Oh, it's MSU number one fan. Very nice. Well, thanks for calling.
No problem. I'm sorry about that. I was asking my grandmother where the pound key was because I'm blind.
Well, I'm sorry about that in regards to the call that you made or just letting us know. I was just this had absolutely nothing to do with you, MSU number one fan. I apologize because I'm just talking about in general. It doesn't matter how well anybody would be speaking. It's just the voice recognition is way off, and so it just comes up with some rather amusing notes here. You know, it always misidentifies somebody's name and why they're calling. So it actually the caller before it had a very it had a couple obscenities there that I know that he didn't speak, but that's what it came out as. So. Well, you are always welcome. You know that. We appreciate seeing you in the chat and haven't seen you for a while. So what's on your mind tonight?
That's much. I just want your thoughts on the Michigan State recruiting this season.
Michigan State recruiting. Well, I hear good things about Mel Tucker in regards to his connection with players and his work ethic and knowing how important recruiting is. We had a Michigan State guy on. This has been a while, but it's been since Mel Tucker took over, and I know that even the Ohio State guys that we have on have good things to say about Mel Tucker on the recruiting trail. And I actually saw a number of guys comment on the Big Ten Network concerning Mel Tucker. So I think he's in a position there at Michigan State that it's a difficult division. We know that. We know that Michigan, I think Michigan has better football talent than a lot of people give the state credit for, because Michigan has received commitments and signings from a number of top level players in the state, but there's just not enough of them. But Mark D'Antonio got it done there. So Mel Tucker's a guy that certainly, again, I think he's got a fighting chance. It's a difficult situation in that division, but I haven't heard anything specific about recruiting or anyone in particular. We can certainly call up their 2022 class, which this is, of course, very early in the process here, MSU #1 fan. But we got, let's see how many commits they've gotten thus far.
They got a good quarterback competition.
So right now they've got the 43rd ranked class for 2021, 10th ranked in the Big Ten. 4 of these signees from 2021 are on campus. They got 15 more on the way.
Yep.
So yeah, we're gonna have to dive into the quarterback competition.
April 24th is the spring game.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite
For quarterback or the spring game?
For the quarterback job?
I like Peyton Thorne. Did you watch the Penn State game? He did great. 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. But Rocky Lombardi just did not get it done this season.
No.
Lombardi had 8 tutties, 9 picks.
Yeah, and he certainly could see that it would be difficult for him to compete for the job again.
Lombardi,
Anthony Russo put up some nice numbers at Temple. He comes in here. And Hampton Fay is a guy that we'll see what he does. He's a true freshman, probably won't win the job this year, but he may be the future.
Theo Day is a good. He's a sophomore or a junior this year coming in. And I think last year we never knew what was going to happen with COVID. I expected Michigan State to do worse than I thought they were. But Mel Tucker's going to get it done. And hopefully lead us to the Big Ten championship. What year did Michigan State beat Notre Dame on that fake field goal in overtime?
What overtime game was that?
When we beat Notre Dame, what year was that?
Oh, on the trick play. You're talking about the trick play that D'Antonio pulled? Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
When was that? I'm thinking that was
2011?
Yeah, something in that range. That might have been the year that you beat Georgia in the Outback Bowl.
Yeah. We beat Wisconsin, too, that same year, but they beat us in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, that was unfortunate for you because it looked like you would have pulled that out, but there was a pretty controversial pass interference call late in that game.
There's also a roughing the kicker as well. What are your thoughts on Michigan State not playing Notre Dame? I think they should more often.
Oh, I would love to see Michigan State and Notre Dame get back together. But basically, the Big Ten rivalries with Notre Dame have been put on the back burner because of Notre Dame's affiliation with the ACC and the 5 or 6 games that they now play with the ACC. And then once they fulfill their what they consider a commitment to USC, Stanford, and Navy, well, that pretty much fills up the schedule.
Yeah. I was going to get your thoughts on that. And are you going to watch the Michigan State spring game this year?
I watch as many spring games as I can get to. So I would hope to. I watched it last year. I'm not. Again, I am so starved and can't wait to watch college football that I get excited for these spring games, but then I flip them on and realize within 3 plays that it's a spring football game, if you know what I mean. But regardless, they're important to watch and to get something out of. And yes, we'll check out Michigan State spring game.
I'm not a real big fan of the holding call.
Are you talking about
There's a run
along
to
the
it.
offensive front? Or are you talking about in the passing game holding calls?
Probably both, because if you're running to the right and there's a hold to the left, let it go. The rest will call it. If it doesn't affect the play, then you shouldn't call it. But if it affects the play, then you should call it. You know what I mean?
Well, I got to admit, I'm right there with you in terms of the officials who just make the calls regardless of where the play is, where the ball is, and how it impacted the play. They just blindly just certainly look at just the play that was made and call it regardless. I'm thinking of an AFC championship game in particular here. But you make a good point. Let's say there's a kickoff return and there's some kind of blindside block on the opposite side of the field, and then it doesn't affect the play, and the officials still make the call on the other side of the field. That's a debate I can see on both sides.
Yeah. It's like when we played Penn State this year, there was a defensive holding that looked like to be maybe a pass interference call that was not called, but it gave us a new set of downs on the goal line with a little over a minute left. They did not call that. And I think if they're both hands fighting for the football to catch it, let them play. Don't call pass interference. Let them play it out.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these teams I see on TV get ripped off because of pass interference calls. If I'm the referee, I'm going to let them play it out. You know what I mean? Just let them play it out.
Well, I think any college football fan hates when a game is decided or seems to be decided by referee calls, but they at the same time need to call what's in front of them. All right, MSU number 1 fan. Anything else you've got for us?
Not much. Just wait until October 30th. That's when we got our date with Michigan.
Okay, MSU number 1 fan. You're welcome anytime. We appreciate the call.
All right, bye.
Thank you so much.
Yep, bye.
All right. Dominic's on the line. Okay, we'll see what we've got from Dominic here. Hello, Dominic. Welcome to the Voice of College Football.
Hey, Mark, how you doing this afternoon?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
Oh, nothing much, really. I just actually wanted to ask you 3 questions. So my first question is, the Miami Dolphins just got Jalen Hurts today. What do you think about that? Is that shocking?
I wouldn't call it shocking, but it is interesting. You took me back with that one. I did not know that the Philadelphia Eagles were looking to shop Jalen Hurts. So I love the NFL. I used to keep up with the NFL. I don't any longer, but I watch the games on Sunday. So let me ask you this. Before we get to Jalen Hurts, I just want to sort out this quarterback situation with the Eagles. So they let Carson Wentz go. Of course, he went to the Colts. They made a trade there. And then they brought in Nick Foles, correct? Brought him back?
Yeah.
Okay. So they are putting all their marbles on the side of, So we may be able to check out this information and verify the Jalen Hurts trade. We may need to do that. we're being told in the live chat that Jalen Hurts was not traded. So maybe we'll look into this one.
Yeah, we might have to look into this one.
So it can be easily verified with a Google search.
Great idea, Mark.
All right, Dominic.
But yeah. Anyway, I got one more question before I head out. What are your thoughts on the Georgia Bulldogs recruiting heading into this upcoming college football season?
Well, their recruiting at this point will have no impact on the college football season for next season. Everybody's signed. Everybody's either enrolled in school and already on the field, on the practice field, or they will be this summer. So their recruiting right now will not impact the next college football season.
That is true, Mark.
All right, Dominic. Have a good one.
You too, Mark. Bye.
All right. We got Kevin from Dallas, Georgia, calls us on a regular basis. Always has some topics that make me think. So this should be a good one. Kevin, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Mark. I just want you to know I'm uplifting you in prayer right now. And once again, as far as if you want to, as far as the counseling, I'll be more than happy as far as to share as far as 2 or 3 as far as colleagues that assist you on that. But as far as number one, Michigan State fan, hey, as far as coach is concerned, the 2 bullet points as far as on his resume, SEC experience and also a top-notch recruiter. You know, he was part of that, one of those Saban disciples. And by that being the case, hey, give him, 2-3 more years, and the Spartans will be back on the road as far as competing as far as in the Big 10, Big 12. In regards to Dominic, as far as Georgia is concerned, if you're a dart player, Dominic, just close your eyes and on the dartboard have 1 through 5. And if you throw a dart with Georgia on it, recruiting every year since Kirby Smart's there is going to be in the top 5. So don't worry about Georgia's recruiting as far as what they do on the field is what counts. As far as what they do as far as recruiting, book it as far as top 5. As far as my question, Mark, was in reference to the going back in the day as far as UCLA playing the University of Miami as far as that game that was canceled by that tropical depression.
Yes.
And I know it was mixed emotions as far as on both sides. UCLA kind of had their mouth poked out, arms crossed because they had to play the game. As far as having to replay the game, I guess that was in December. And I was just wondering, do you think that game, as far as losing that game, it's pretty much they haven't recovered from that loss? And the follow-up would be, if they would have won that game, do you think that their future could have changed immensely?
So this is a great question. So just to outline the situation for everybody that's unaware, real quick, 1998, we're headed down the stretch. And actually, the day of that game, I was at the SEC championship game at the Georgia Dome, getting set to cover Tennessee and Mississippi State, which factored in very heavily as well, because Tennessee was the only undefeated team in the country that finished the regular season undefeated and the championship game, and of course was number 1 en route to a national championship. But they trailed Mississippi State with about 7 minutes left in that game, 14-10, before they got a turnover and put on a couple touchdowns, Peerless Price in particular. So anyway, that was a day in which we had a lineup of teams contending for that second spot that included Kansas State, UCLA, Ohio State, and as it turned out, we had, I believe the count was 6 teams that finished with 1 loss. Ohio State, Wisconsin, Florida State, Arizona, UCLA, Kansas State all finished with 1 loss, and Florida State was awarded the spot opposite Tennessee in the BCS championship game by the fabulous BCS system that I was a huge supporter of. Wink, wink. So in this particular game, UCLA and Miami were supposed to have played in September. As Kevin is outlining, there was a tropical storm. The game was pushed back to the first week of December. So this game was played on the weekend of the conference championship games, which only included the Big 12 and the SEC at the time. So the Pac-12 season would have been over at that point. Miami was a decent team. They were a good team. They were like a top 25 kind of team, but UCLA was playing for a national championship spot, and Edgerrin James could not be tackled that day. And I believe the final was like 38-35, despite Cade McNown having a big day. Miami was too physical, and the edge just put it on UCLA and knocked them out of a BCS championship game, because the dominoes fell otherwise, and the Bruins would have played as an undefeated team in the championship game. And really, as Kevin's outlining, ever since, UCLA has not been on the national map. They have not been a factor in any national championship race since then. Haven't even come close. 2005, they started 10-0, but they were really a paper lion, and then they lost to, like, USC beat them by like 40 points. Then they lost their bowl game. They weren't that good. Had they gone to so I think it's a huge excuse if anybody in the UCLA camp would say, well, that derailed us and we haven't recovered. Well, teams lose difficult games all the time. If you have a decent football program and hire the right people and hire the right coach, that should get forgotten. But I will answer it from the other side, that had they won that game and played in the championship game, I don't know that it would have had a long-lasting effect to this point, 23 years later. But I would think that, considering that just 2 years later, Pete Carroll was hired at USC and had only one marginal season before he got that thing rolling. He went 6-6, and then by season 2, he was off and running, winning major bowl games. That UCLA, just 2 years removed from a national championship game appearance, I would think that they would have had a lot more cachet to battle Pete Carroll on the recruiting trail, and it could have been a much different story into the 2000s for UCLA.
Indeed. Now, as far as going back to the young lady that had asked as far as the Big Ten Notre Dame rivalry game, would it be safe to say, for instance, if everyone involved would have their druthers, and say, for instance, okay, Notre Dame play their ACC schedule, so that would be, Mark, say maybe 6 or 7 games minimum
that Notre Dame plays against the ACC?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this contract's been going on, I'm just going to take a shot, it's been somewhere around like 6 years, something like that. And I've counted every year, and it's been 5. And then this past season, not the one they just played because they were in conference, but 2019, they upped it to 6. So I don't know what it is this year. I'll pull up the schedule. So it's either 5 or 6 games.
Because where I was going, Mark, was, okay, would it be safe to say that if you wanted to incorporate the ghosts of yesterday when it comes to Notre Dame rivalry games with the Big Ten, would, as far as the max, as far as that minimum, maximum, as far as that concerned, would be 3 to 4 games. So you'd be looking at, say, for instance, Michigan State, Penn State, and who would be that 4th team? Or would there be a 4th team?
There's really not a 4th team. Michigan State, and Purdue were the 3 teams that Notre Dame used to play every year.
So wouldn't that, as far as add to, hey, quote, this prestige, as far as having, say, playing those 3 games plus, say, 6 games, and they could play directional tech as far as for that 10th game if they just don't want to play another Big Ten school?
So I'm looking at this year's schedule, and they play 5 games against the ACC. So that leaves 7. You've got USC, Navy, and Stanford, whom they always play. So that takes us up to 8 games. They still have 4 left. and they picked up. They are playing Purdue this year. This is the first time they've played Purdue in 5 or 6 years. I know they played them in 2012. They played them the year they went to the BCS championship game against your Alabama Crimson Tide. I remember that because they barely beat a bad Purdue team. And that was one of the last times they played Purdue. So it's been quite a while, but they do play Purdue this year. And the other games are Toledo. They play Wisconsin out of the Big Ten. Cincinnati. That'll be an interesting game. And like I say, Navy and Stanford. So,
Mark, that being the case, they could have the best of both worlds. They could have the proverbial have your cake and eat it too, as in, okay, we play 5 ACC games, we play another doggone 3 Big Ten games, and hey, we play the Navy game, which is the independent, then the doggone 2 Pac-12 schools, and then hey, they could keep that contract, and everyone could really, for the first time since Notre Dame has been on the map, can keep their mouth closed. But until they do that, I mean, I would think that, hey, you're going to have those people that like me on a bad day that's going to be a Notre Dame basher.
Well, the one thing I will say in defense of Notre Dame, and again, my issue isn't necessarily with Notre Dame. They're doing what they're allowed to do. It has to do with conferences and us not having a central body to say this is the way the game's played, and you got to join a conference and play under the same rules as everybody else, not play one less game than teams that are playing in conference championship games. So it's not Notre Dame's fault. They're just getting away with what they're allowed to get away with. But it would be a pretty brutal schedule if you've got 5 in the ACC, you've got Stanford, Navy, USC, that's 8, and then they play these 3 out of the Big Ten, Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue, that's 11. They would play 11 Power 5. Navy's not in the Power 5, but 10 Power 5 games, and Navy's in that range typically, versus what teams in the ACC and the SEC have with the 4 non-conference games, and they usually schedule 3 cupcakes. So it would be a loaded schedule.
But wouldn't you think that by having a schedule that loaded, and say, for instance, okay, we say 11 games, it's a 9-2, 10-1 regular season schedule, that could keep the wolf, as far as that bay for a little while? Because with the schedule, as the schedule has been constituted as far as in the past, you have as far as detractors, and it all depends on what side of the bed they wake up on, Mark, as far as whether, hey, they're going to bring the long knives out or not. So I just wondered, as far as if they were to do a schedule as you just stated, that it would be more so as in, hey, everyone has to keep their mouth closed. But then also I was going to ask you, Mark, in reference to forecasting as far as the future, and this is just something that just popped, as far as came to mind. It was in regards to, let's look at 4 years down the road as far as the University of Alabama. We'll just say that, hey, it is, Saban is going to bid as far as those on the capstone are due. And I want to throw 4 names at you. And as far as of those 4, which one would you say that would be, I'm going to say least likely. I'm not going to say most likely, but you can give me out the one, Mark, and that is, I'm going to start with the shocker first. Jeremy Pruitt, Mario Cristobal, Dabo Sweeney, Kirby Smart.
Well, the Jeremy Pruitt, if this was 2 months ago, I would have thought, okay, this is a little premature, but he's recruiting well. He had a nice end of the season 2 years ago. Maybe 2020 was an aberration, difficult year, all those things. He still has the program possibly headed in a decent direction, but with everything that's occurred over the past couple months, I think he's completely off the map. He would have to go somewhere else and do a remarkable job to put himself in any kind of position to be considered for the Alabama job.
Well, along those lines, and I agree. And the thing is, he's presently as far as with the Giants now. And the one thing I look at as far as when it comes to that particular, as far as when it comes to the University of Alabama, as far as the other, my opinion, Mark, is more so as in I'll pray that when the next coach comes on board is that it's a as far as the administration is progressive, and as the buzzword as far as a buzz phrase, thinking out of the box. That number one, as I've shared with you before, not getting a dog. Just like we said, hey, no Michigan man, no Alabama man, as far as this next prospective coach. Then also as far as Coach Saban has as being progressive and being while everyone else is doing doggone consumer math, he's doing doggone trigonometry. The same as far as with this next coach. And the only negative I've heard about who I'm going to suggest is that he's supposed to be not and it kind of blew me away when the comment was made that he was not a dynamic recruiter, because everything I've seen he has been, and that's Cristobal. And I don't know whether it's that West Coast bias for some, because the person who stated that he was vanilla was a guy that lives on the West Coast. But I would think that would be because he's a former, Saban assistant, and that would be, my pick of the three.
So for those people that believe, and we'll see how it plays out again this year for Kirby Smart at Georgia, that he's an excellent recruiter, he can organize the team. So he takes a knock as a football coach in game, but there's more to it than just recruiting and then coaching in a game. And he's got that middle ground covered as well. He's built a program, or he's taken over a program that was in good shape and elevated it. So he checks the boxes, except for his quarterback judgment has been impaired, and his just making a few bad decisions in big games. Of course, Dabo and Kirby Smart otherwise would be on equal ground, except Dabo has shown that with the right quarterback in play, Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson, that he can topple the giant, and he elevated the program from much worse standing than certainly Kirby Smart did at Georgia. So Dabo's clearly, if you want the safe selection, it's Dabo, and he's an Alabama guy, as you well know. So that people would applaud that beyond belief. I can't imagine anyone would say, "Oh, that's a questionable decision," because Dabo's won 2 national championships and his program's elite, and they weren't elite when he took it over. And really, they've never been elite in the history of the program for more than 1 or 2 years. So he's done something at Clemson that's never been done. Where Kirby Smart is doing a nice job at Georgia, but doing maybe slightly better than what Georgia's been and had been under Mark Richt. Mario Cristobal's out recruiting everybody in the Pac-12 by a decent margin. So I don't know what the knock is on his recruiting, but because when you stack up the rankings and what he's been able to do, that's impressive, is build an offensive line at Oregon that's comparable to just about anybody in the country. To bring offensive linemen to Oregon and to find depth and premier offensive linemen to recruit and sign at Oregon. I don't know that people talk about that, but if you just want to go with the safe play, Dabo's 1, Kirby's 2, and Cristobal's 3.
Well, and I agree with you. And if you did a blind resume as far as the two, as far as Dabo and Smart, and I'm gonna kind of tweak a little bit, as in removing the national championships and just say as far as regular season and say conference championship, they're comparable. Smart would be hard pressed to leave Georgia because hey, he's a Georgia guy, played at Georgia, etc. As far as Dabo, I think the only person that could get Dabo back to Tuscaloosa would be his former coach, who he served as a grad assistant to, and that would be Stallings. I mean, because he's a Stallings, and I mean this term affectionately, he's one of Stallings' boys. So he would be able to, get him back to the capstone. But I think that in regards to Dabo, it will be more so as in Dabo is he's the Beatles all by himself, Mark. And I think that right now he feels that he would be bigger than the program. And I don't know whether a certain person whose last name is on the bank of a certain bank in the state of Alabama could appreciate that. So, and as well as his colleagues at the social club could appreciate that. So, and so that would be my only, as far as that would be my only, I guess, concern. But initially the first, and then also Mark, it's a night and day difference. It's a night and day difference between him and Saban. You're looking at a person who, you're looking at one who, when it comes to people that do what you do, Mark, eat them up, try to, try to at worst, and on a good day, at best, eat up media. He tolerates media. And as well as, but as far as Dabo is concerned, 99% of the time, he enjoys as far as being, in front of the mic. And it's just on those 1% of the times in which, he will, try to tear in. So, preferably, that's going to be a long time down the road. But, but the thing is that, the ride is only going to last so long. So it doesn't matter that, we don't, what's those saying? You prepare for war in the time of peace. So, we have to look down the road as far as who will be, quote, that next coach, or as some would say, the coach who's going to be the for real coach after the next coach. I have to say. So. And, in closing, Mark, I was going to, kind of once again go back, when it comes to what could possibly transpire as far as 2 of the 4 big schools at the conclusion of this season. And I was wondering, how do you feel as far as the prospect of saying, okay, we look at Oklahoma, Clemson, Ohio State, and Alabama. As far as that, would it be safe to say, strong possibility that of those two of those 4 institutions, that there will be multiple quarterbacks transferring?
Well, for any of those programs that are signing enough quarterbacks at that level, meaning a 4- and 5-star level, where they're going to fill up the room with more than 2 guys, I think a lot of these quarterbacks are comfortable with being a second guy because they know they're a play away or can battle it out with that guy, win the job if he falters, that sort of thing. But once you get to 3 deep, and the third guy looks around and sees, okay, I'm not getting anywhere here. I'm the third guy, and it would take a ton to happen for me to play, and I'm a 4 or 5 star. And so I think for example, at Ohio State, that first decision is going to be made this year. It's been Justin Fields through the last 2 seasons. Now that first decision is going to be made to give one of those 3 quarterbacks a clear path to maintaining his starting job. Whoever wins the job going into game 1 will then have the opportunity to keep that job for the rest of his stay at Ohio State, unless he falters. So that kind of leaves the other 2 guys out. And especially if that third guy is the third guy and the third string quarterback. And then most likely that's going to be the guy that's going to keep leaving these programs, is going to be, when that room is stacked with 4 and 5 stars, the third guy, the fourth guy would be the guys that will be leaving. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, and survey says Ohio State. Ohio State being one institution. Then as far as of the other 3, initially I was thinking more possibly one as far as Alabama, and as we've spoken about and before, as far as if Bryce don't get it, I don't see Paul Tyson leaving. Paul Tyson will stay there, and if the university asks him to stay a doggone 5th year, Paul Tyson to stay there because of, my granddaddy coached here, so I'm going to stay here. So, but also as far as maybe another school, Mark, not this, I'll be quiet, and that could be considered as far as possible quarterbacks in the transfer portal is Georgia. Because even with the Mathis kid leaving, and I'm still, and as far as what Bennett, with Bennett, Bennett is Bennett, and I'll leave it at that. But as far as when you look at the young man that transferred in, played the last few games as far as USC, you're looking at Carson Beck as far as from Florida. I think this should be his sophomore year. Plus, they're going to bring in I take that back. Vandegrift should be in this year, and then Gunnar Stockton as far as the class of 22. So that doggone quarterback room is going to be full. So by that being the case, if I'm not mistaken, the young man that transferred from USC should have at least 2 more years. So it's a strong possibility that Georgia could be added to that list of institutions that's going to have quarterbacks in the transfer portal.
All right, Kevin. I really need to move on. I appreciate the call. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks. Take care. Have a good evening, Mark. Bye-bye.
Yeah, the time got away from me here. So it is 7:30. We're going to be live on the Miami channel at 7:30. So if I can reverse time like the Flash once did when he circled the planet in reverse fashion and got the planet to reverse its cycle and move the clock back. So we've got some issues there in the live chat. I can't really address that right now, but I hope that all of you would be able to work that out yourselves. If not, then certainly seek me out. We're going to be again on the Miami channel. Mike Williams, thank you so much for the contribution. That's so much appreciated. And also Falcon ERX. It's funny because we kind of made Dominic a bit of a star tonight, and I'll add to that because I forgot to mention this to Dominic when he called, is that it got back to me that Dominic was on another show and completely misrepresented what I said would happen to George Pickens this year. It was stated that I had said that George Pickens would come back and play the end of the season for Georgia this year, which he may decide to do that. That is not what I said. I actually went back and listened to what I said about George Pickens when I was asked what would most likely happen. And I said, it's an 8 to 10 month rehab. He'll most likely be back, meaning he could come back in December. However, I clearly stated my guess is that he's going to prepare himself for the NFL draft. That was misconstrued by Dominic, who went on some other show and misrepresented me. So I know that's happened before, but not a big deal. All right, everyone. Appreciate it. We're going to talk Miami football on the Miami channel right now.